Liberty Hill, living the Bible together through education, missions, and ministry.
For this time and for this week, I can tell you that I was not very happy when I initially saw the markings on the back of the building. And I don't necessarily know at the moment whether or not I could recognize and find solace in this particular text. As a matter of fact, I really had hoped that maybe Christ had said something else. But as you think about what he has said to us, it is important that we think about this thing called love. When we think about the way to live, there is a great way to live. And the great way to live is to follow the lead that Christ has given us. I tell you, it's easy to be mad. That's where the devil wants us to be, is to be mad, to be upset with not only each other but the world. Because as long as we're upset and as long as we're mad, then we are acting counter to that which Christ has taught us to do. Interestingly enough, I find that amidst Christian people, or those who profess to be Christians, that it seems that we have a lot of things that we think of as being wrong. A lot of things that we get upset with when people do. But it seems that we are not as challenged when people are not loving. You know, we talk about the political arena in this country, and oftentimes the people who say they are Christians are the very same people who embrace violence, especially with that of firearms and assault weapons and so on and so forth. It's interesting that the political people who say that they are Christians are the very same people who find abortion wrong, but somehow or another they find it right to bomb the abortion clinic. So it's interesting when you think about the thing that happens sometimes in our mind, whereby our actions don't match our spirituality and our words don't match our actions. We say one thing and we do another. And so it becomes very easy for the church to talk about this whole idea of integration, and that the Lord is going to call us all home. And yet we still, on Sunday morning, are still very segregated in our worship, whether it is at Liberty Hill, or whether it is at Liberty, whatever, across the country, whether it is a white or black or a church or so on and so forth. It's interesting that we still have those tags where we talk about churches, when we say it's the black church or white church, so on and so forth. So it's interesting that we talk one thing, but we do something else. And so in the church we talk about, well, Christ is one who is loving, but oftentimes the church isn't a very loving place. And sometimes we can be very mean to each other and to community and so on and so forth. And so generally that's the natural thing to do, because that's the way we were born. We're born in sin, and so the sin of our fathers, Abraham, our sin of our fathers, Adam, and our mother Eve, continue to plague us. It plagues us collectively, and it plagues us individually. And so oftentimes we find ourselves living life in a type of spiritual cancer, with hatred and all of that plaguing us. You know, it takes energy to be mad. It takes energy to be mad. It takes energy. It takes away from your health to be mad. When you're mad at somebody, they find out scientifically that it changes your heartbeat. It changes the way the blood flows through your body. It changes even the way you breathe. When you're mad at people, it really makes you sick. And oftentimes the one that made you mad has gone on about their business. And you're still holding it, and it's still distracting you, it is still hurting you, it is still problematic for you. And so I would submit to you today that the world is dying from hypertension. We are sick. We are depressed. People say, well, Reverend, how do you know that? I look at the TV, they've got all these remedies and all of the medication. Of course, I will say as a side note that when they talk about these medications on TV, all of the side effects, if the side effects don't kill you, I mean, you might as well just deal with the problem you already had. You know, and they talk so fast, you know, they make all diarrhea, hypertension, you could die from this, you could bleed to death, or something, you know. And so you wonder, you know, what's going on in the world? We're sick. And sometimes we're sick because of our attitude, the way we look at things. And the world has us looking at things to the point where we're upset. And so I would submit to you that there's a better way to live. Here's the way Jesus says to us. Look at verse 28. He says, but to you who are listening, I say. Now notice, I love this because he's, you know, the ones that are not listening, it's okay. You're not listening. But for those of you who are listening, I've got something for you. He says, but those who are listening, love your enemies. And so a great way to live is to love your enemies. It's to love your enemies. Do you know, I have found out in life that there have been times that my enemies have been more powerful than my friends. Yeah. And I think if you were honest, many times your enemies have been more powerful than your friends. Because an enemy can get in your head and stay there for a long time. And they bother you and you can't sleep and so on and so forth. You know, a friend doesn't really have that kind of power over you. You don't just sit up and think about your friends all the time. But your enemies can control your thoughts where you sit up just thinking about it. One, you want to know how to get them. Especially the ones at work, because they're dealing with your money and you have to, you know, and they get on your nerves, see. And your enemy can really, really get in your head and be a part of, you know. Your enemy can control your actions if you let them. Yeah, you'll be doing dumb stuff. Your enemy will be playing with you like a puppet. And your enemy knows how to make you get mad. And they love that. They play on that. And they say the little things because they know the little things to say to make you act foolish. And then they stand back and watch you. And so what Jesus says is, he says to love your enemy. See, because when you hate your enemy and when you spend all of that energy and time in your enemy, then before you know it, your life will be controlled by that enemy. But when you love your enemy, it creates, number one, a release for you, but it also creates an invitation for them. It creates a release for you and an invitation for them. See, if you continue to hate them and they hate you, then there's already an invitation, and that invitation is that we continue to hate and we keep doing things the way we're doing them. I'm trying to one-up you, you're trying to one-up me. But when I determine a ceasefire for me, then my love invites you to love as I'm loving. See? My love invites you to try something different because I'm trying something different. If I do what you're doing, then that means nobody's teaching anybody to do anything different. But if I decide that I'm going to love you in spite of how you treat me, then that means I'm inviting you to learn a new pattern and paradigm. I'm saying to you, whether verbal or nonverbal, because it doesn't have to be me speaking it, it's in my action. And because I didn't, not only did I not invite you to love, but I invited myself to become a better person. See, a lot of times people think that there's power and strength in the fight, and it is the physical negative fight. And so we forget what Kenny Rogers taught us when he said you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to walk away, know when to run. You know, when he was talking about the gamble. The fact is, I learned a great deal from my father, but my father died when I was 15, and so I had to watch my father, but then I had to observe other older men to understand how to be a man. You know, a lot of times we think of being a man and being macho as being able to put your dukes up and being able to knock the other fella out. No, 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 no. Real manhood and real masculinity is seen in a lot of brothers in this church. Number one, I can tell you right now, I know a brother in this church, there's no way in the world I'd fight every man in here before I would fight him. I'll tell you that right now. And I've said that before. It's not the first time I said behind his back. I never said it to his face. But since I'm in the pulpit with my robe on, I think I can say it to his face today. There's no way you couldn't pay me to hit Deacon David Howard. Now the rest of y'all, I'll try to take y'all. LaRon, pretty big dude, I'll try to take him. But I'm not hitting David Howard. Now, somebody said, well now why not? Why not? I'll tell you why. Because usually Deacon David Hodge is the quietest one of us. Ain't got nothing to say. He's smiling most of the time. He's probably one of the nicest one of us. He's a real nice guy. But one morning I was traveling, and Deacon Hodge was traveling also because we're brother-in-laws, and so I was on the treadmill. Deacon Hodge came in, and as I was on the treadmill, I watched this brother. He didn't know I was watching, but I was watching. He came in, and he did some things with dumbbells, and he had that machine going. I didn't even know you could use that machine in all those ways. I don't think you were supposed to. And so I said, this brother got to work out in a half, you know. And I said, no, I don't think this is somebody you want to mess with. Then I know that he's a military man, been in the Navy. Them Navy boys can fight. And so I wouldn't want to get in a fight with Deacon Hodge. However, what I've also noticed is that the strength that he has is not strength that he uses. I wish you could get this. See, I pastor a church that has at least one retired sergeant in it. And I tell you, a sergeant of the police force, I know he can tear you up too. Because if you don't let him beat you, he'll shoot you. But I've noticed there's a certain amount of restraint. One of the nicest people when you're out in public and deals with people. Now, I know that there's got to be some strength in there that could tear you up. But the true strength is in knowing when to hold it in. See, Jesus was not crucified because he was weak. He was crucified because he was willing. See, so just because you have the power to get them told, just because you have the strength to beat them up, just because you have the strength does not mean that you need to use it. Far too often we're using power that needs to be reharnessed and redirected in another way. See, there is a way to get them, but it is not the way that comes natural.
Come on, sir.
See, the way is the way that Christ tells us, and that is to love our enemy, because then if we love our enemy and we heap enough love on them, one of two things will happen. Either one, the Bible talks about heaping coals on their head. One, the love that we have will destroy them. Oh, wow. Love will destroy your enemies. Hate will empower them. Love will destroy them. Because see, light and dark cannot be together at the same time. And enough love will overpower hate every time.
Yes, it will. Yes.
Love will either make them flee or draw them closer. See, I've got some enemies. I used to think like David, I'd want my enemies to become my footstools, but now I want my enemies to be another F. I want them to be my friends. Because if I love my enemies, enough, ultimately they can become my friends. And let me tell you, there's nothing like a friend that used to be an enemy.
Come on now, that's good.
When I first got called to this church, as a matter of fact, the people who loved me so much, none of them are here today. The very one who credited themselves with calling me to this church, I'm the one that brought you here, spoke up for you, and told them to bring you to this church. As a matter of fact, I had two people, and one of them stopped by my house every single week to tell me what a fine person I am, what a great job I do. so on and so forth. None of them are here. Some of my biggest critics are still here. Somebody once told me, they're still here, that I was sure hoping that you didn't end up pastor. But they're still here. One of the people that I believe loves me the most. Let me tell you that when you bring forth love, the people who were against you are much more powerful for you than you could ever imagine. So don't spend your time hating enemies. Spend your time loving them. Not only that, somebody said it's not that easy, so you're right, I'll agree. He says this, he says, love your enemies, do good to those that hate you, bless those that curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. So it's a little bit more than that. It is to love them, but it's also to embrace doing good and prayer. To embrace doing good and prayer. See, love is an action word. I know you've heard that before. People say, I love you. Prove it. My grandmother's famous words, love is what's in your hand. That's what she would tell my grandfather. My grandfather would come, I love you. She said, what's in your hand? She loves it, loves what's in your hand. So she wanted him to say that he loved her, but she also wanted him to prove it by also bringing her something. There was a great member, notice I say great, there was a great member in this church that came this morning with a whole lot of love for the pastor. And so when you really love somebody, sometimes it also causes you to take some action. And so when you come and you say you love the pastor, and you also have a few slices of bean pie in your hand, that's love. So it is not just about talking, it is also about doing. And so if you really want to overcome your enemies, don't just say I forgive them and love them with lip service, also do something good for them. Oh my goodness, that was the hard part. That's the part we don't like. Is that when you really truly want to overcome this whole idea of dealing with your enemies, not only do it with your heart, but do it through your emotion, and know that sometimes you will have to go through the motions to teach your heart to catch up. Sometimes you will have to go through the motion to help your heart to catch up. Can I say it like this? Sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. And so there are times when you got to do something good for somebody who you know really can't stand you. And so you act in the best interest of your enemies. Brother Saunders, that's a hard thing to do. It's to decide to do something good for somebody who you know dislikes you. But that's what we have to do. Not only that, he says in praying. So you do good for them, and you also pray for them. And that helps you to overcome the obstacle of hating them and disliking them. You're really not going to like this next part. 29 says this, if someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. You got to learn to turn. You got to learn to turn. Now that's the part that's hard. Because when somebody takes something from you, when somebody hits you, you feel like I need to go back with the same force.
Yeah, please help us, Jesus.
Matter of fact, I'm going to roll up on you and bring somebody back with me. But he's saying here that no, that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to let it go. The way to do it is just turn from it. Don't allow that energy to impact you where you get caught up in that. Just turn from it and go your way. If they take something from you, give it to them. I'm an only child. That's hard for me. I'm going to tell you, Bud Jennings, being an only child, When you go to your room, your things are still where you left them. Being an only child, people don't mess with your stuff. Your food is still on your plate. If you eat half a Twinkie and put it up in the cabinet, it's still there. It's yours. You don't have no siblings to deal with. And so for me, I can tell you right now, as my wife often proclaims me as selfish. I'm an only child. I'm not used to you touching my things. I don't want you to touch my frying pan. I don't want you to touch my things. Leave them alone. I recently bought, I have a favorite glass that I took from somebody else. I bought 2 or 3 more because I want to make sure that mine is there. Yeah. So I mean, I really understand this whole thing. So you know when I get the maddest? Because I've heard people say, oh, well, I get mad because somebody lied to me. I hate liars. I can't stand a thief. Ooh, I don't like a thief. Because it's mine. How can you steal from me? It's mine. I'm not used to you taking nothing from me. And the feeling I get when somebody steals from me is that feeling that you got to hug yourself. You ever had to hug yourself? You know, yeah, see, now Deacon Papa, you laugh, but see, you know what this position is? This position is I'm keeping my hands off of you. You see? Yeah, see, then sometimes you got to rock yourself. You just got to rock yourself, you know, dance a little bit, and keep you from kicking somebody. And so I don't like when people steal from me. But he said, when somebody takes something from you, let them have it.
Oh, man.
He said, let them have it. Now, I would not understand this if I didn't have my daughter Jasmine. But I understand it. I understand it now. She's taught this to me. She's taught this to me. She's taught this to me with regards to her way of parenting. If one of her kids takes something from the other kid, she has a whole box. And she'll say, give it to him. Here's another one. That's her. That's who she is. She just giving up. The more I think about that, I think about the way God works. Our Heavenly Father is a lot like Jasmine, or Jasmine is a lot like our Heavenly Father. In the sense that, do you know that God hears your faintest cry? Do you know where you got the first from? The thing that you said they stole, do you know where you got it from? He gave it to you. Has anybody ever stolen anything from you before? Did you live through it? That ought to tell you something. There's people that owe me money, but guess what? My money didn't stop.
Come on now.
Now, wouldn't you be mad if somebody borrowed $100 from you and you never got another $100? I wish you could catch this. I'm trying to paint a picture for you. So if I borrow $100 from you and that's it, you will never get more money until I give you that 100 back. Wouldn't that bother you?
Yes.
But aren't you glad that when somebody borrows something from you, that doesn't stop your money from coming in? And so you know what? There are folk who borrowed money from me. There are folk who haven't paid me back. There are folk who have stole things from me. But guess what? I still got shoes on my feet. I got money in my pocket. I get paid today. And so how am I going to sit there and just be mad because I didn't get something back when God has given me so much more?
Right. Amen.
The person who has the problem is the one that borrowed it, because I'm not giving you nothing else right now. But why would I have the problem? The Lord has continued to replenish and restock and give to me. And he has blessed me to be the head and not the tail. You came to borrow with your sorry broke self because you needed it. And I gave it to you because I had it. And I got some more in my pocket. And so if you don't come back with it, I'm that borrowed $20 from you and you got a job making several $1,000s every week? Why are you so mad? So a few crumbs fell off your table. Think of the blessings that God has given you. And walk in the blessings and be happy. I have to tell myself that. I have to walk in that, and I have to remember not to be mad. I'm too blessed to be mad. I tease my kids all the time. I say, I hope y'all get a house big enough so that when I come over for Thanksgiving, I'm going to tell you I'm going to the restroom. When I leave the restroom, I'm just going to go hide out in your house and you'll never find me. And you know what the kids always say? Fine with us. Now that's wisdom. You know why that's wisdom, Brother Tracy? Because why would you be so foolish to have a house big enough where you don't even know your parents are there and you mad because they're there? You ought to thank God that you got a plate $20 from you and you can still keep on and you're not even missing that money. You're not mad about the money, you're mad about the principle. And so you're mad about the whole thing that they took the money from you. That's all it is. You're mad about the situation. You're not mad about the amount. And let me tell you this, just as a side note. Most members of Liberty Hill, you've heard this before. Never give nothing to somebody that you're going to be mad about. I don't loan nobody an amount of money that I'm going to be mad about. I loan you what I can afford in my means. And that way, I loan it to you as if I'm giving it to you. That way I don't have to be mad at you. See, I'm not going to give you my rent money. I'm going to give you my rent money. My kids need my rent money. They got to live. See, when you do that, that's on you. Don't be upset because you gave somebody something more than you should have. Because let's be honest, sometimes you didn't give it to them because of the goodness of your heart. You gave it to them trying to be a superhero. And you need to stop being a superhero. Your cousin and them is always looking at you for some money.
Say that.
What happens when you lose your job? Then you don't hear from cousin nobody. Ray ain't called you in a month. But when you got something, here they come. Got the nerve to come to your house with one can of beer. Ain't even bought you name. And so stop trying to save people. Because only God does that. Look at verse 31. It says, do to others as you would have them do to you. Think of yourself. This is the one time I'm going to tell you to be selfish and think of yourself. Because when you get ready to do something to somebody else, think about you first. And think about how you want to be treated and then treat them like you want to be treated. Think about yourself. Don't treat nobody less than you want to be treated. Give them the same love and peace and joy that you want somebody to give to you. Give them the same instruction. Give them the same kindness. Give them like you want to be given. Forgive them like you want to be forgiven. Because the same measure you had their way is the same measure coming back to you. But then here, let me tell you what the women say when they go to the nail shop to get their nails done. You ready? It says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. Now I'm going to tell you what women say when they go to the nail shop. I want something different. You got to be different. You don't want to be like everybody else. He says, even sinners do that. Do good for people to do good for them. But if you really want to be somebody different, if you really want to be that extraordinary Christian, Sister Saunders, if you really want to be the one that sticks out, and you don't want to do like everybody else, the rest of the world eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But if you want to be different, then you got to learn how to love those who hate you. You got to learn how to do good for your enemies. You got to learn how to be a diffuser. You got to learn how to pray for them. You got to learn how to move beyond what they took from you. You got to learn how to forgive. You got to learn how to love. You got to learn how to do the opposite of what you want to do. Yeah, maybe you want to put your hands on them. And yeah, maybe you want to trap them. And yeah, maybe you want to get them fired. And yeah, maybe you want to take some notes and send them to the bosses. Yeah, you got some issues and problems. Son-in-law done got on your nerves and you want to tell your daughter all of the things that's wrong with him. And you got all these sisters and brothers that's got problems and you want to solve all those problems because you don't like their spouse or whatever. Whoever your enemy is, let it go. Stop taking notes, stop taking journals, stop telling God how bad they are. The Lord already knows how bad they are. What you want to tell the Lord is how bad you've been. In other words, I'm going to look at myself before I look at them. And I'm going to recognize that the same mess that's in them, only by the grace and the glory of God, there go I. In other words, what I'm saying is all of us got a little hate in us, and all of us, as Dr. Cornel West would say, all of us got a little funk and a little stank in us. And so don't get so high and mighty that you think that you are without fault yourself. All of us got a little evil in us, and we are somebody's enemy. And so we ought to thank God that he saved us from our nasty self. And now that he has saved you, don't think that he can't save somebody else, because God's power is powerful enough to go to the highest mountain into the lowest valley, and he can still forgive us and love us and take care of us. He put his arms around us and put us up out of the dirt and the muck and the mire and clay. And so we ought to thank God for what he's done for us, and what he's done for us he can do for somebody else. And so today we ought to love our enemies and do good for them, because you want somebody to do good for you. As a matter of fact, in the darkest day of your life, there is a man named Jesus who did something good for you. The Bible says that yet while we were sinners, he died for us. He allowed his blood to be shed because we were an enemy to faith. We were an enemy to God. We were an enemy to the way of God, to the will of God. And yet he sent his son. He sent himself to bleed for us and to be a sacrifice. And today we recognize, in spite of all that they did to him, they put a crown of thorns on his head. They pierced him in his side. They hung him on a cross. He still hung, bled, and died. The songwriter said that he did not come down from the cross. He could have come down to save himself, but he did not come down for me. He did not come down from the cross for me. He died on the cross for a propitiation, for a placeholder for us to fill in the gap for us. And then when he died, they thought it was all over. They thought, oh, fine, the message that he preaches gone. And so there's some this morning who might say, preacher, I don't care how much you say about love. I don't care how much you say about my enemies. This is a frivolous sermon, because there's nothing that you can do to make enemies better. But I'll tell you, he died and they put him in the tomb. And there's some today who might think that this is a dead idea. But all you've got to do is wait for it. Yes. And all you've got to do is wait for it. It may not seem like you're getting the fruit out of what you've been doing. Maybe you've been loving your enemy and you say, nothing has happened. They still hate me just like they always have. Wait for it. See, he stayed in the tomb one day. Wait for it. So there are going to be people who are saying, why are they still like that? I'm trying to love them, Pastor. I've given them my coat and my cloak too. Wait for it. He stayed there 2 days. Wait for it. Sometimes it's not going to seem like things are going on. You're not going to see any rustling. You're not going to hear any movement. You may not think that things are working, but keep on loving anyway. Wait for it. He stayed there a 3rd day. And so the Bible lets us know that he was there in that tomb for 3 days and 3 nights. And sometimes we're going to have some 3-day and 3-night experiences whereby it seems like what we're doing isn't working, but wait for it. Because as you know him in the fellowship of his suffering, we know that early one morning he got up, and we know him in the power of his resurrection. And so one day when you least expected, the Lord will touch your enemies and change their heart and turn them around and make them what they ought to be. But you've got to keep on doing what you're doing. Love your enemies. Do good for them. Pray for them. Be different than everybody else. Right. Questions?
Liberty Hill, living the Bible together through education, missions, and ministry.